Taylor Lindsay-Noel was a Canadian national gymnast whose hopes and dreams of competing in the 2012 Olympics came to a tragic end when a devastating accident left her paralyzed from the neck down. But Taylor refused to let it stop her from creating a new dream. And now she wants to be an inspiration to others by sharing her story.
Growing up, I was one of those very overactive children, and my mom decided to put me in gymnastics, and I loved it. By the time I was 10 years old, I was asked to be on the Canadian national team, and I was a very bright hopeful for the 2012 Olympics. But on July 15, 2008, at the age of 14, my dream tragically ended. I was on the high bar and I was attempting a new skill. And the second time I attempted it, I landed head first, breaking my neck and severing my spinal cord, instantly leaving me paralyzed from the chest down. I had always been known as Taylor, the future Olympian. So when that was taken away from me, I truly didn't really know who I was. And I quickly found myself severely depressed. I immediately dove into physical therapy to try to get my body in shape, but I was also dealing with severe depression and anxiety. I finally decided to see a therapist and get my mental health in check. And this was a huge part of my healing. Following university, I started a podcast called Time With Tay as a way to connect with others. And this led me to eventually starting my own luxury loose leaf tea business. In my 28 years on this earth, I have lived and learned a lot, especially that there is so much life after tragedy, and with the right mindset, there are no limits on what you can achieve.
Joining us virtually from her home in Toronto, Canada, Tam fam, let's welcome Taylor Lindsay-Noel. Taylor, so good to have you on. Thank you so much for joining me.
Of course, thank you so much for having me on your show. It's so nice to meet you.
Listen, the show is about living and learning, and you have lived a life and learned from it in ways that I'm sure most of us, cannot imagine. You were just 14 years old, and before your accident, as you pointed out, these incredible gymnasts, Taylor the gymnast, Taylor the supergirl, Taylor the future Olympian were things that were used to describe you. And when that whole identity is taken away and you're so young, how did you start to really process it, or were you even capable of processing it at such a young age?
I definitely was not able to fully process the scope of my accident. I was naive to what really happened to my body. And in a way, it kind of protected me. I immediately threw myself into physical therapy. I always knew what it was like to work out my body. So for 19 months in rehab, I pushed myself as hard as I can and put that as my sole focus. And while I was focusing on my physical health, my mental health was something that was slowly taking a toll on me.
Yeah, I was looking at that video of you in that smile, just radiating as you are taking the measures needed, hopefully, to rehabilitate. And what you realized early on that it was very different than what you had probably imagined in your mind. And you said that you were a functioning depressed person.
Yeah. I like to describe it like that because when you hear people talk about a functioning alcoholic, there's someone who can show up and go about their day but are struggling with alcoholism at night. And that's what depression was to me. I was able to go back to school, to university, get good grades, get honors, show up for friends, be present. But at the end of the day, I was crumbling when I got home. And it was something I was even able to hide from my own mother. I found a way to keep going for others, but was spiraling in my own turmoil.
You started to piece together your life and you started to focus on your own mental health. That led to you rewriting the narrative of who you are, who Taylor is, and Taylor the gymnast became Taylor the podcast creator. Tea Time with Tay. I love that. I love that name. Um, allowed you to create an identity, but also to connect with people perhaps in a way that you didn't even know you could do. And that's a talent to do what you do with the podcast.
Thank you. Well, I love podcasting, and it was something that I discovered in university. It was the rise of the podcast at that time, and after having an internship at a few different places, I realized I wanted to be able to tell the stories that I found fascinating. And for my entire life, I've grown up drinking tea. And in my house, it's one of those houses where people come over all the time and sit down for hours at the table having a cup of tea. And that's when the best conversations happen. So when I was thinking
Yeah.
of a name for my podcast and what I wanted to bring to the world, Tea Time with Tay was just a perfect fit, interviewing people that I love over a cup of tea.
Yeah. Well, the podcast led to another business venture. Up next, we get the tea on Taylor's Tea after the break. Welcome back. Today I'm talking to guests who are sharing what they've lived and learned to inspire others. And I'm here with 28-year-old Taylor Lindsay-Noel, who at the age of 14 years old, her dream of becoming an Olympic athlete came to a tragic end after a devastating accident left her paralyzed from the neck down. But Taylor refused to let it stop her from visualizing a new dream for herself. She launched her own podcast, Tea Time with Tay, to talk about something that became a passion for her. And it led her to starting her own organic tea company. Taylor, I love this. So I do know a little bit of the backstory where at first you were looking for a sponsor and then suddenly you're like, I can do this myself. 2018, you launched in.
Yes, I during the podcast, I knew that in order to make money, I loved what I did, but I also wanted to make money one day, that I would need a sponsor. And I reached out to a very big company and never heard back from them. But
Mm.
in the art of pivoting, I decided if they're not going to sponsor me, I'm going to start my own company, which was quite the feat considering the fact that I had never taken a business course in my life and went
Yeah.
to school for radio and television arts. But slowly over time, in a lot of Google University, I figured it out and researched extensively and was able to launch my company, Cup of Tay, on November 26, 2018. And it's been quite the journey ever since.
And then, as you started to, I guess, get your tea legs, not your sea legs here with this business, you received a surprise email from O Magazine. That's
I,
huge.
I absolutely did. It was crazy because I had my accident on July 15, 2008. And on July 15, 2020, I wake up. It's the hardest day of the year for me every single year because it's a reminder of the death of my former self, essentially. And I remember looking at my email and it was very simple. It said, "This is whoever from O Magazine. We'd love for you to send all of your products for consideration for the December issue," which in my head, I was like, "That's Oprah's favorite things list." And it seemed fake. And I deleted the email.
Oh my
I
gosh,
deleted
Taylor.
I know, I deleted it. It just seemed so fake. But I couldn't shake it. And so later on that day, I decided to take it out of the trash and call that number just to be sure. And it ended up being extremely real. It turned into weeks of testing and eventually sending the product to Oprah herself, where she eventually approved it. And we were on the December Oprah's favorite things list.
And that's how I found you, and everyone's been talking about you since. And I know because of your own struggles with mental health, $1 from each starter tea kit goes to mental health advocacy. How important is that for you as you look at what you've lived through at a very young age and what you've learned from it?
It was a non-negotiable for me when I started my business. I saw the power of community and how many people were really there for me when I was going through my darkest times. And although I wasn't able to verbalize what I was going through at the time, I knew that my business would be a platform for me to shed light on important issues. And mental
Yeah.
health is an extremely important issue that needs to be destigmatized, especially in the the Black community. If I'm going to be
Yeah.
honest, it was something that we don't talk about often, and I felt that if I had the opportunity to share my experiences and help others while also giving money to these causes, it would be the perfect
Wow.
place for me to put my efforts.
Well, you are only 28 years old. When you look ahead, where do you see this going?
I am going to be opening up our first store in my city this summer, which I'm extremely excited about. And the dream for Cup of Pay would to have one in every North American city. And beyond that, I would love to continue to do motivational speaking and share my story with a bigger audience and one day write a book.
Congratulations on the success that you've had and the success you will have moving forward. And I look forward to sipping a little tea after this show. So thank you so much.
Thank you so
I
much for having
appreciate you
me.
joining us, Taylor. Of course, of course.